Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me all of this information. That would be Jason Dance, Chris Fellon, Barrett Peterson, Juan Arriaga, and Jacqueline Wolf. Thank you so very much. If you have a tip for me, please feel free to give me a shout here, and I will give you a shout basically here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show. And we are back in the saddle after missing last week. So this is about 2 weeks worth of data breaches, and believe me, this doesn't disappoint if you're into data breaches. I am not, but nevertheless, here we are. And let's start with Mailchimp. Obviously, they are the email marketing giant, and they confirmed a data breach after malicious attackers compromised an internal company tool to gain access to customer accounts. Now, in a statement given to TechCrunch, Mailchimp's CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer, Siobhan Smith, or Smythe, said that the company became aware of an intrusion on March 26 after identified malicious actor accessing a tool used by the company's customer support to basically gain access essentially to customer information. This was a social engineering attack. And here we are. Now, the attackers viewed approximately 300 Mailchimp accounts and successfully exported audience data for 102 of those, according to the company. Mailchimp declined to say exactly what the data was accessed, but told TechCrunch that the attackers were targeting customers in the cryptocurrency and finance sectors. And because of what Mailchimp does, we can expect a lot of phishing against cryptocurrency and finance sector mailing lists that Mailchimp had. So heads up to you, those of you into cryptocurrency or finance, which is pretty much, I think, everybody at this point in one way, shape, or form. Moving on. Let's talk about Fox News, the large, basically 24-hour cable news network. Records belonging to Fox News have been exposed online through a database that was unprotected, essentially just basically without a password, according to a new report. Now, security researcher Jeremiah Flowers and Website Planet research team discovered that the exposed database included about 58 gigabytes of data, just short of 13 million records. These records included Fox News content, storage information, internal Fox emails, usernames, employee ID numbers, affiliate station information, and more. One folder was said to have contained 65,000 names of celebrities, cast and production crew members, and their internal Fox identification reference numbers. Fox News responded to this data breach by claiming that exposed files were part of a, quote, development environment not connected to any production environment. The exposed data has since been taken down. Now, whether it was test data, as Fox News suggests, is basically speculation, so we'll see what happens, but heads up to you if you have anything to do with Fox News, meaning you're employed or I guess you've been on one of their TV shows. Moving on, let's talk about Trezor. This is a cryptocurrency hardware wallet provider. They basically started a thorough investigation into an alleged massive data breach that may have compromised users' email addresses and other vital personal information. On or about April 3rd of this month, numerous users from basically the crypto Twitter community started alerting Trezor about ongoing email phishing campaigns, specifically targeting the hardware wallet users and their registered email addresses. Amid ongoing phishing attacks, Trezor users have confirmed receiving spam emails from alleged perpetrators. These criminals impersonated officials intending to lure funds from unaware of investors. So, if you have anything to do or use the Trezor cryptocurrency hardware wallet, heads up to you. You may be a victim of a phishing scam, if not now, possibly in the future. Moving on. Let's go to the United Kingdom and talk about high street retailer The Works. They're shutting down some of their stores following a cybersecurity incident, which saw attackers gain unauthorized access to their systems. According to a statement issued by the firm, which has over 500 stores across the UK, selling a range of things like price-cut books, art and craft materials, gifts, and stationery, the attack basically caused issues with their payment system. That basically forced the closure of some of their stores, and according to them, customers have not had their payment card details exposed as a result of this security breach. So heads up to you, if you shop at The Works in the United Kingdom, one of their 500 locations, you might want to check in sooner than later. Moving on, let's talk about the Andhra Pradesh Mahesh Cooperative Urban Bank in India, and this is basically a textbook case of what not to do if you're running a bank or any business for that matter, because this bank did not have a valid firewall license, had not employed phishing protection, lacked an intrusion detection system, and basically eschewed any of the intrusion prevention systems out there, and basically shockingly, they got compromised, and the criminals essentially made off with millions of rupees, the Indian currency. Now, according to the Hyderabad police, which last week detailed an attack on the bank that started with over 200 phishing emails being sent across 3 days in November of 2021 to their employees, at least one of those emails obviously succeeded in fooling a staff member, resulting in the installation of what is known as a RAT, or remote access Trojan, and they got right in. And with zero, basically, zero intrusion detection, anything, they got right in and nobody was alerted, and here we are. So heads up to you if you bank with the Andhra Pradesh Mahesh Cooperative Urban Bank in obviously around Hyderabad. Here we are. Heads up and good luck. Moving on, let's talk about North Carolina A&T University. I originally read that as AT&T University. Obviously not. A&T University. Now, this is the largest, apparently, historically black college or university, and they just showed up on a ransomware victim site after the Black Cat Group this past Wednesday released a statement, 2 weeks ago Wednesday, released a statement 2 weeks ago detailing a cybersecurity breach. Now, the university said that it was attacked during the week of its spring break between March 7th through 11th, continuing a long-standing trend of ransomware groups attacking victims when they know that the security teams will be their smallest or distracted, all those kinds of things. So heads up to you if you go to North Carolina A&T University, you might want to check in, or if you're employed there as well. Moving on, let's talk about Northern Ireland Trust Ford. This is part of the Ford Motor Company, obviously sitting in Northern Ireland. Now, the ICO, or Information Commissioner's Office, is currently investigating a cyber attack across Trust Ford branches throughout the United Kingdom. The vehicle dealer group revealed the attack, which is believed to have been committed by the Conti ransomware gang, affected their internal systems. In particular, access to the internet and phones within the businesses were affected. However, Trust Ford is assuring their customers that their sites are remaining open and they are indeed trading. Additionally, the attack did not impact the Ford Motor Company systems itself, headquarters obviously in Detroit, Michigan. Now, Trust Ford assured customers that sites remain open and trading. Additionally, like I said, they did not impact the Ford Motor Company. So heads up to you if you have anything to do with Trust Ford, which I believe is a financial institution from the Ford Motor Company sitting in Ireland, Northern Ireland specifically. Moving on, let's talk about the American automotive tools manufacturer Snap-on Tools. You may have heard of them. They announced a data breach exposing associate and franchisee data after the Conti ransomware gang began leaking their data in March. And I quote, "We believe the incident involved associate and franchise data, including information such as names, social security numbers, dates of birth, and employee identification numbers." So if you work for Snap-on, heads up to you. If not, if you don't work for Snap-on, odds are you're not affected because you're probably buying them at Home Depot or wherever. So there you go. Moving on. Excuse me. Let's talk about the Wellstar Health System. They suffered a data breach through their email system, and they reported this past Friday, April 8th, in the afternoon. Wellstar said that they learned 2 months ago that some unauthorized person or individual had gained access to 2 email accounts. Via those accounts, patient healthcare information was exposed, including patient laboratory information. Wellstar basically saying this in a written statement. So heads up to you if you use or are a patient of Wellstar Health System. Moving on, let's talk about CashApp. A few people alerted this to me. Juan, thank you very much for that. Over 8 million users of the mobile payment app CashApp could be affected by a data breach after a former employee of the company downloaded reports containing the personal information on users in the United States. Now, on Monday, Block, the financial service company that owns CashApp and was created, if you didn't know, by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey, announced that it learned that a former employee had downloaded this information in December. That is according to a report that they filed with the SEC, or Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, although this employee had access to this information during their employment, the report says this information was downloaded after the employee was no longer with the company. Obviously, that smacks of a lack of internal security controls, because the person isn't with the company, they should have been cut off. Now, the data downloaded did not include usernames and passwords, social security numbers, or bank account information, but it did include full names and brokerage account numbers, which are used to identify a user's stock activity on Cash App investing. Some information also breached, quote, included brokerage portfolio value, brokerage portfolio holdings, and or stock trading activity for 1 trading day. So heads up to you if you use Cash App or Cash App investing. you might want to check in. Odds are you've already been alerted by Cash App itself. Moving on, let's talk about Ballad Health in Tennessee. Now, this healthcare system said that in January, an investigation began after unusual activity was noticed on an employee's email account, and on February 17, it determined that this employee's email account was accessed without authorization for a quote-unquote limited amount of time, according to the statement. We are talking exposed data, including names, address, date of birth, medical history, medical condition, treatment information, medical record number, diagnosis code, patient account number, and Ballad says, no social security numbers were basically in this information that may have been accessed. So heads up to you if you use Ballad Health in the state of Tennessee. Moving on, let's talk about Globant. They are an IT and software development giant. They just admitted a data breach after the new hacking group Lapsus allegedly leaked the source code of the firm. Now, on March 30th, Lapsus came back from a quote-unquote vacation with a new victim pinned in their Telegram chat channel, and that would be Globant. They basically are alleged to have compromised the system, stealing credentials and intellectual property. They then published a torrent containing approximately 70 gigabytes of data, allegedly including the source code belonging to Globant, and so there you go. So heads up to you if you use Globant software or work for them. Moving on, let's talk about the Conservative Party of Canada. This is one of the two largest political parties in Canada, from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, they are saying that they are confident that data about their members has not been compromised following the reports of an alleged data breach. Now, a spokesperson for Jean Charest's leadership campaign, I'm assuming she's running or he's running for Premier of Canada, Prime Minister, said this past Wednesday it was informed that several people received emails from the camp suggesting that they had made donations when in fact they had not. Now, somebody else named Michelle Coates-Mathers said the campaign determined that basically someone had used their website to make false pledges using IP addresses from Ukraine. Kind of interesting. Now, later in that day, the incident was publicized on Twitter by a conservative strategist and campaigner who shared their experience and warned members that the data had been stolen. Coates-Mather recalls, though, that what happened was, quote, an obvious attempt to create chaos that would not be tolerated. So were they breached? Is this phishing? What is going on? I'm not sure, but the Conservative Party of Canada has got some investigating and some splaining to do. Moving on. Let's talk about Autopay Direct. They basically got hit with a ransomware attack. This was discovered on February 5th of this year, and the investigation revealed that an unauthorized group had access to Autopay between approximately October 11th of last year through February 5th, and that's all I've got right now, but heads up to you if you have anything to do with Autopay Direct. Moving on, let's talk about Spanish energy giant Iberdrola. They got hit by a cyber attack that led to a data breach impacting over 1 million customers, according to local reports. They're also, for the record, the parent company of the UK power provider known as Scottish Power and others, and they said that this attack occurred on March 15th of this year. Now, it reportedly resulted in the theft of customer ID numbers, home and email addresses, and phone numbers, but not financial information such as bank account details or credit card numbers. And this is where it gets interesting, because there are suspicions that this may have been tied to the Russian conflict in Ukraine after it was revealed that computers in Siberia were involved in the attack on Parliament, which also targeted, I guess this massive Spanish power provider. However, there's no firm evidence that there is Russian state involvement, so they're still investigating. We will see, but if you basically are a member of Scottish Power, owned by Iberdrola, or another power company that is owned by Iberdrola out of Spain, heads up to you. And finally, and we have two finalies for you. These are both very interesting. I want to give you an update on Ubiquiti. This is the network infrastructure manufacturer, and there's an update here because here's what's going on, and I found this interesting. Now, journalist Brian Krebs is being sued by network equipment maker Ubiquiti for defamation over his coverage of a data breach, which was eventually revealed to be the work of a company insider. And full disclosure, I've had dealings with Brian Krebs before. I think he's a nice guy. I was interviewed by him a couple of years ago for the work that I did with the COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition, and so we've got a bit of a relationship. Nothing like we're having barbecues on the weekend, but I just want to be transparent on this because I'm about to give you my thoughts here. Now, here's what's going on. Ubiquiti initially disclosed a data breach on January 11th, 2021, and it told its customers that the breach was minor and had basically occurred at a, quote, third-party cloud provider. But On March 30th of 2021, Mr. Krebs reported that an unidentified whistleblower told him the data breach was worse than Ubiquiti had originally stated. Krebs' story and others like it published the next day caused Ubiquiti's market cap to drop by $4 billion, and that is according to allegations made in Ubiquiti's lawsuit. Then, in December of 2021, the Department of Justice said that it had charged Nicholas Sharp, and I quote, for secretly stealing gigabytes of confidential files from a New York-based technology company where he was employed. The Department of Justice also said, and I quote, while purportedly working to remediate the security breach, Sharp extorted the company for nearly $2 million for the return of the files and the identification of a remaining purported vulnerability. Now, Mr. Sharp reportedly worked for Ubiquiti at the time of that attack. Ubiquiti also alleges that Mr. Krebs knew Mr. Sharp was his source, but published a story about the charges against Sharp that was, quote, intentionally misleading. And I quote, despite these damning facts, Krebs published a story on his blog the next day, doubling down on his false accusations against Ubiquiti and intentionally misleading his readers into believing that his earlier reporting was not sourced by Sharp, the hacker behind the attack. That is a direct quote from the lawsuit. Now, it's important to note that generally journalists don't reveal anonymous sources without the source's consent. I've been given information by sources that do not want to be named in the past, and I do not name them. Now, that is true even if that source is charged with felonies. A felony charge is not proof of guilt. Of course, a conviction is. An indictment is not a conviction. So there you go. So even though Mr. Sharp, let's say, is essentially charged with fraud, he's not convicted until he is not a felon. That is an important distinction under U.S. law. Now, the lawsuit also says that Mr. Krebs was intentionally deceitful because, quote, first, he described Sharp as a current employee. He then described Sharp as a former Ubiquiti developer to deceive readers into believing that the sourcing for his original story was a legitimate source, someone other than Sharp. Now, the lawsuit refers to basically this passage from Mr. Krebs' December 2nd, 2021 article, and I quote Brian Krebs' article directly. In January 2021, technology vendor Ubiquiti Inc. disclosed that a breach at a third-party cloud provider had exposed customer account credentials. In March, Ubiquiti employee warned that the company had drastically understated the scope of the incident and that the third-party cloud provider claim was a fabrication. On Wednesday, a former Ubiquiti developer was arrested and charged with stealing data and trying to extort his employer while pretending to be a whistleblower. Now, Mr. Krebs notes that the individual in question was a Ubiquiti employee as of March 2021, and that at the time of the December charges, a quote-unquote former developer was implicated. If those individuals are the same person, and if that person was fired from or left Ubiquiti between March and December of last year, then both of those things can obviously be true. And there you go. Now, this lawsuit alludes basically to a request from Ubiquiti to Krebs that he retract this article, and he apparently has refused that. The suit also claims that Mr. Krebs, quote, intentionally misrepresented the truth because he was financially incentivized to do so because he runs ads on his website. Now, Mr. Krebs also added an update to his March 30, 2021 article linking to the December 2nd story where he wrote about the felony charges against Mr. Sharp. Ubiquiti is asking for $425,000 in damages, U.S. currency. And it seems to me, interestingly enough, that what Brian Krebs was reporting was actually factual. I can understand it from Ubiquiti's position, but as a journalist, he's going to keep those sources essentially close to his vest. And nobody would disagree that he's a journalist, given the amount of publication and writing that he does and all of that. You know, I would have the same standard for myself if I were in that position as well. And I don't think he was trying to, in any way, shape, or form, defame or make light of the Ubiquiti situation or basically advise his readers otherwise. And who doesn't, for the record, have advertising on their website? He's a prolific publisher on KrebsOnSecurity.com, and so even if he didn't write on Ubiquiti, he would still have advertising everywhere. Personally, if I'm speculating about this or predicting an outcome, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, and I think that Brian Krebs' journalistic integrity, you know, quite frankly, has been rock solid. I mean, it's really been he's really been honest about these kinds of things, you know, even if you sometimes disagree with him. So we'll see where this goes with Ubiquiti. You know, like I said, I'll be honest, and that's why I did a full disclosure. I'm kind of rooting rooting for Brian Krebs in this one. So there you go. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I will give you updates as soon as I know anything. And finally, this is the last one. We have to talk about Russian food delivery service, Yandex Food, because this, quite frankly, is fascinating and a little terrifying, obviously coming in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, here's what's going on. A massive data leak from Yandex Food revealed the delivery addresses, phone numbers, names, and delivery instructions belonging to those associated with Russia's secret police. This is according to findings from Bellingcat, the research team. Now, Yandex Food, which is a subsidiary of the larger Russian internet company Yandex, first reported this data leak on March 1st, blaming it on quote-unquote dishonest actions of one of its employees and noting that the leak doesn't include users' login information. Now, Russian communications regulator Roskomnadzor, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, has since threatened to fine Yandex up to 100,000 rubles, which at this point is roughly less than $1,200 US. The ruble is really taking it on the chin due to the sanctions. Basically, so about $1,200 US or 100,000 rubles for this leak, which Reuters says exposed the information of about 58,000 Yandex Food employees. Now, the Roskomnadzor also blocked access to an online map containing the data, an attempt to conceal the information of ordinary citizens, as well as those that have ties to Russian military and security services. Researchers at Bellingcat, though, gained access to this trove of information, sifting through it for leads on any people of interest, such as an individual linked to the poisoning of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. That was a very fascinating case. So, by researching this database for phone numbers collected as a part of the previous investigation, Bellingcat uncovered the name of the person who was in contact with the Russia's Federal Security Service, or FSB, to plan Navalny's poisoning. Bellingcat also said this person also used his work email address to register with Yandex Food, allowing researchers to further ascertain his identity. Now, researchers also examined the leaked information for the phone numbers belonging to individuals tied to Russia's main intelligence directorate, or GRU, or basically the country's foreign military intelligence agency. There you go. They also found the name of one of these agents, Yevgeny, and were able to link him to Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and find his vehicle registration information. Bellingcat uncovered some valuable information by searching the database for specific addresses as well. When researchers looked for the GRU headquarters in Moscow, they found just 4 results, a potential sign that workers don't just use a delivery app or opt to order from restaurants within walking distance. Instead, when Bellingcat searched for FSB's Special Operations Center in the Moscow suburb, however, it yielded 20 results. Several results contained interesting delivery instructions warning drivers that the delivery location is actually a military base. One user told their driver, and I quote, "Go up to the 3 boom barriers near the blue booth and call after the stop for bus 110 up to the end." While another said, quote, "Closed territory, go up to the checkpoint, call the phone number 10 minutes before you arrive." In a translated tweet, Russian politician and Navalny supporter Lyubov Sobol basically said the leaked information even led to additional information about Russian President Vladimir Putin's former mistress and their alleged quote-unquote secret daughter. Now, quote, "Thanks to the leaked Yandex database, another apartment of Putin's ex-mistress, Svetlana Grinovkik, was found." This is according to Mr. Sobol. Quote, "That's where their daughter, Luisa Rozova, ordered her meals. The apartment is 400 million squared, roughly worth about 170 million rubles, or $1.9 million US. So there you go. Now, if researchers were able to uncover this much information based on data from a food delivery app, it's a bit unnerving to think about the amount of information that Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, take your pick, have on their users as well. Obviously, if I'm using DoorDash or whoever, this is a problem because they've got my address, they know what I order, et cetera, et cetera. There you go. And in 2019, a DoorDash data breach exposed the names, email addresses, phone numbers, delivery order details, delivery addresses, and the hash salted passwords of 4.9 million DoorDash users, a much larger number than those infected by Yandex Food. So here we are. Obviously, that's a very interesting thing. As we take this dumped information, understand we can do research, we can get demographic information, we can start to understand our targets. And when we were talking about basically a hot war as Russia has invaded Ukraine, this information can be used to map out where Russian security officials or other Russian officials are, what they're doing, where they are ordering food from. And obviously that would allow somebody with that information to possibly plan attacks on target. So we'll see what goes on here. Obviously, this is a very interesting situation. I'll keep you up to date on that. But those were your breaches of the week. Were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.